Hello, I'm your instructor, Bernard Norcott-Mahany, and I happened, when I was looking for other things on one of my thumb drives, happened to notice that I had a slideshow of 4 different artistic representations of the rape or the kidnapping of Persephone. As some people noted in their art discussions, the people in the art world up until the 20th century, only rape generally meant kidnapping. The Latin word actually, rapere, means to seize. So, of course, there is a sexual element because Hades is going to make Persephone his bride. But it doesn't have quite the same significance as it does for us. So, but these are 4 artistic representations. I just wanted to show you sort of how artists might go about depicting this scene. So, the first scene is by Niccolo del Abate, The Rape of Proserpine. Sorry, you can't see the whole title there, but that's what it's called. Proserpine or Proserpina is the Latin name for Persephone. This is an oil on canvas painting done around 1570. So you can see this is an extremely busy scene. What we have here is we've got a male figure right here kidnapping this woman here, who of course is sort of pressing against his face, trying to sort of get away. He is near naked. He's wearing what looks like a pink cape that is wrapped around his front, and she's got on some sort of looks like sort of diaphanous dress, but she has this dark a wrap around her that's sort of coming undone. He is heading towards this chariot, which is up here on the hillside, and over here are a group of women. They're dressed in sort of a diaphanous outfits, and they're looking shocked and horrified. This takes place behind sort of a wall of trees, behind which, there's like a city, right? A city on what looks like a river. It looks like the city is actually split in half by the river. There are dark clouds. It's sort of a dark, forbidding scene. So, clearly, this is Hades here kidnapping, or Pluto to use the Roman name, kidnapping Persephone or Proserpina and taking her away. Now, there are big differences from Homeric hymn number 2. For one thing, she is not alone. She's not picking flowers. There aren't any flowers around, so there's no evidence she's been picking flowers. It's not like out away from everything. I mean, here you've got like a city. It looks like a pretty good sized city in the background. People would actually know stuff, so that this is quite different. Now, there was a poem done in the 4th century CE by a late Roman poet named Claudian called De Raptu Proserpinae, on the kidnapping of Proserpina. And in that version, she is not alone. She's actually with a group. And in fact, in some versions, Athena is with the group, and they are fighting. There's actually a battle going on over Persephone. So we do not have that in the Homeric hymn number 2, but that is probably why we get all this stuff here, that this particular artist knew the version that Claudian had done. So this is a painting by Joseph Heinz. This is The Rape of Proserpina, again using the Latin name. This is an oil painting, but it's done on copper. And these are the dates, 1598 to 1605. Here, again, it's a very busy scene. We have a lot more women here lying on the ground. They're looking up. The chariot is flying through the sky. A sort of bronze-skinned man, again with sort of what looks like maybe a pink cape that's sort of flashing up in the air, although that might be Proserpina's. He's got some brownish cloth sort of draped right around his privates here. He's grabbed her. She's reaching out. She does seem to be holding something or dropping something, which might be a flower. So that at least might be a reference to that. It's again this dark scene, forbidding scene. There is no city really in the distance. I mean, this might be something, but it looks like it's quite a distance away. Again, this is here. We've got Hades or Pluto kidnapping Proserpina or Persephone. The chariot, of course, is flying, which is interesting because what happens in the story is it comes out of the ground, so presumably it's in the air briefly. He grabs her and then it goes back underground. In the first painting, that chariot was waiting for him in the distance, right, in the background, and he's running to it. Here, he's catching her on the fly from the chariot, which is closer to what the hymn says. That's the way it seems to happen. At least it happens so quickly. But again, she's not alone. She's with a group that are witnesses. Again, this seems to owe more to Claudian's treatment of the story than the version we get in Homeric Hymn number 2. This is probably the most famous treatment of this scene. Bernini's marble statue. I think it's in the Vatican, actually, 1621 to 1622, The Rape of Proserpina, again using the Latin name. Here we have only 3 figures. We've got a male bearded figure who's clearly quite muscular. He is standing. He has grabbed hold of this woman whom he's lifting up. Clearly, he's having some trouble. She's trying to fight him off, and he's somewhat sort of buckling under the effort of lifting her and trying to grab her. She's turned away. She's got one. Her left palm is, basically almost punching him in the face, certainly pushing against his face. So there's a lot of tension here. There's a lot of agony shown on the face of Proserpina, which we see front on, because this is the way you would see it in the museum. And behind the pair, there is a dog. It's the 3-headed dog, Cerberus. You can't really see this figure here, but the figure is there. If we walked around it, we would see it. So we can tell who these figures are. We've got a kidnapping scene going on. The title indicates that the woman is Proserpina or Persephone. That means the other figure is Pluto or Hades. And if we had any doubt, the fact that Cerberus is on the scene further indicates that. The emotionality of the event and her shock and horror at the moment is probably best captured in this particular rendition. But once again, this is one of the things I'm always sort of amazed at in art of the Renaissance and later, is that they really want to show, of course, the human body, which they do, but they, for the most part, don't want to show the male sexual organ. And so what you have is, like, here you've got this cape, maybe it's hers, maybe it's his, but it's just sort of like falling off, and magically happens to be falling almost as if it were taped on right in front of his privates, so we don't have to see that. She, of course, is totally naked and open to view. And then the last piece, of course, is the piece that you did the art discussion on, Thomas Hart Benton's Persephone. That's seems to be the title. I mean, sometimes it's called The Rape of Persephone. He uses the Greek name, which is interesting. But like all of Benton's work, what he does with the myth is he updates the myth to the 1930s, to Missouri. He was a Kansas City painter. He taught at the Kansas City Art Institute. This painting, in fact, almost got him fired from the Kansas City Art Institute. The board of directors voted, and he won by a single vote. So had that person voted the other way, he would have been booted from the Art Institute for this work. He is basically Benton is sticking his finger in the eye of the Kansas City art community. Kansas City in the 1930s would be a very puritanical community, very sort of like conservative religious outlook on things. And so they, think art's uplifting and art's all this other stuff. And despite the fact that modern art from the Renaissance on, has nude women a lot. I mean, women are often naked in these paintings. It's done sort of tastefully, and so therefore, if you're more religiously conservative, you can sort of ogle the women in the paintings, but you can also sort of suggest, I'm appreciating the artist's technique. Well, Benton was having none of that, and so in doing this, he figured, what you're looking at is a naked woman, and I'm just going to basically slam her right out there in front of you. I'm going to put her in a pinup pose. This is exactly what you would see in a pinup in the 30s and 40s and 50s and even 60s. This sort of pose, the legs turned to the side so you don't see the bottom genitalia, but you do see the rest of the body quite full. There's a famous I think Playboy centerfold of Marilyn Monroe where she's basically in a similar pose to this. So what he's basically saying is, you think you're all high and mighty, but you're all basically, as guilty as anyone else in our patriarchal society of ogling women. And to really underscore that, the old guy over here, who is a representation of Hades, is actually a self-portrait of Benton himself. So Benton was actually looking at this woman on a couch. There's a picture of it in the Nelson Atkins Museum, showing him in his studio working on the painting. She's lying on the couch pretty much like this, and he's standing above her, looking down on her. So this is sort of like, this is me at work, but it's also me as a creepy old guy ogling this woman. And because she's front and center, and this painting is huge in size, when you see it on the wall, it's a big painting. Benton did various sizes, but this is like almost mural size. It's large. And so people who are looking at the painting are also looking, sort of ogling the woman. So Benton's having his fun at himself. He's having his fun at the prim audience in Kansas City, saying, hey, you're as much a voyeur as I am, as much as, a lot of people are. So, but a couple things in this painting that are sort of noteworthy. One is we do have a basket of flowers. The flowers are tiger lilies, which is not the flower that she's picking, but it does show the Persephone figure here as having been picking flowers. She is lying atop what appears to be a red satin dress. And this, based on the material here, this would be a short dress, so almost like a flapper type dress. She's got black high heel shoes, and there are lace panties. That white fabric there, those are lace panties. The interesting thing about around her, she is lying on the ground, but the ground basically is almost like a Tempur-Pedic mattress. Her body sort of sinks into it. It hugs her. She's lying aside a river. In the background, you can't really see it with my face here in the way, but there is a guy up here who's harvesting, and there are wheat stalks. So you've got signs of spring, the flowers, but you also have signs of late summer or early fall in the harvesting. There are also some leaves that have fallen to the ground, which again suggests fall, even though many of the other leaves are green. So you get this mixture. He has updated the situation. He's turned Hades into a farmer. The main thing is he's turned Persephone into a pinup girl. She appears to be enjoying sort of sunbathing here. Her face looks like she's maybe reflecting. She's in some sort of reverie. But she's got plucked eyebrows, and she's got this sort of marcelled hair. So this is someone who's sort of aware of her physical attraction, something that the virginal Persephone in the story, right? Persephone would be the equivalent of a 13 or 14-year-old. This is not a 13 or 14-year-old. So the cart, it should be the chariot, is a mule cart like you would find on a Missouri farm in the 1930s. There is a driver. Of course, there is no driver. I mean, Hades is the driver in the story, but here he's got a sort of farmhand ready to make the getaway. Although you wonder how fast you could go in that thing. So this is the moment before he's about to grab her, and he's ogling her. So. But Benton, does this with all of the paintings he does of mythology, and he probably has a dozen or more Greek mythology paintings. He had one. There was a store downtown called the Emery Bird Thayer store. It was the equivalent of like a Macy's. It was downtown on 11th Street. That store, when it existed, had a cafeteria, and the mural for the cafeteria, he did the mural, showed the battle of Hercules and Antaeus. This is a story. Hercules fights this giant named Antaeus. Antaeus is the son of Mother Earth, and so whenever he gets knocked down by Hercules and touches the earth, he gets more strength. So each time he gets stronger and stronger, and then Hercules realizes what he needs to do is cut off the connection with the strength, and he has to lift him over his head. Well, in the painting, they're just about ready to start, and they both look like Missouri farm boys. They're both wearing coveralls. They don't have any shirts on. They're just wearing coveralls. And Hercules is basically heading towards Antaeus to get ready for the fight. So Benton does this all the time. He's very much a regional artist. He's basically painting Missouri. His uncle, also named called Thomas Hart Benton, was one of Missouri's first senators. So this is a family that has Kansas City connections, has Missouri connections, and he's very much pushing those, even where he's taking myths and then updating them. But in this particular case, his intention was basically to stick his finger in the eye of the Kansas City art community. He was successful in doing that. They were outraged. They called for his dismissal from the Art Institute, and he won by one vote. So he did get to stay, which was terrible for them, but it does show you just how powerful those forces were in the 1930s in the Kansas City area.